And the government also failed to explain the concepts and terminologies to the people when messages are communicated to the people. It is not according to the modern documents in Afghanistan. For example, in the Constitution of Afghanistan, citizen is mentioned, and every person, according to the Constitution, every person is a citizen of Afghanistan. They should enjoy their rights and duties. Enjoy their rights, and they have the duty. Should have. They have the duties of the citizen. But in the messages communicated by the government and issued by the government, they call people a subject. So they do not pay attention that the subject is not equal to to citizen. The word, these are two different words and have different connotations. And the government and the international community, they failed to to carry out the effective psychological warfare operations. Today in Afghanistan, I'm afraid of the Taliban's operations and attacks, and also the director of National Security Department. So we are both equally influenced, equally afraid from attacks of Taliban's attacks on the streets of Afghanistan, because they lack information, and they Taliban are superior. I mean, Taliban have been successful in their warfare operations, and they have the kind of fear in the mind of everyone. In the transition period, the communication, the strategy communication is again weak, and it is not as it should be. Even the international community, they are sending or issuing contradictory messages about the transition. For example, the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says that during this period, the period of transition, we will pursue the strategy of fight, talk, and build. But she or the U.S. government didn't explain that, how to fight home, whom you are fighting, or and whom you are talking to, and what are you going to build. And from the NATO, top commander of the NATO, they said that we are going to stay in Afghanistan after 2014. So people are confused what this transition really means. Is it just a reshuffle or a review of this strategy, or it is a real transition in submitting or transferring the responsibility to the Afghan forces? There are a couple of concerns among Afghans about the transition. People think that Afghanistan national security forces are not able to carry or handle the situation after the transition, because they're not trained and they don't have equipment, and because they don't have the morale to fight the Taliban, and the low confidence and the low morale of the army is attributed to some of the policies, as analysts say, to some of the policies of the government. The government has started the reconciliation process, and people take that as bringing Taliban to the power in making them the boss or the master of the people. So people, soldiers, commanders, and members of the Afghan security forces, national army and police, they think that we should have a connection with Taliban. We should not get disconnected with Taliban, because if they are here, then if they are here, if we do something, if we fight them today, then if they come back in China, they will not favor us, and they will be hot to us. For the future, when I talk to people in Afghanistan, and also wanted to have their views on the transition, what they want to happen after the 2014, the suggestions were first, to use the modern communication or to communicate the transition messages to the people in an effective manner, so that people know what the transition really means, and also the international community's engagement in Afghanistan after 2014, and also the capacity of the government to run the affairs of Afghanistan after the foreign forces leave Afghanistan. And the second thing suggested by people and also analysts in Afghanistan was to use the traditional communication tools, mosques and diras, jirgas, to convince the people and to equip them with real first-hand information about the transition process, and defy or oppose the propaganda of the Taliban. The third thing the proposed was messages. The government should really assure the people that the government believes in protecting their rights and the achievements Afghanistan have made so far. Because people are worried that if the foreign troops leave Afghanistan, then Afghanistan will return back to the situation which was in 10 years back, and there will be no respect for human rights, no democracy, and no respect for women's rights, and no freedom of opinion and press. So the government should assure the people that it is able and capable to protect the people's rights and the achievements Afghanistan has made so far. And finally, the unification of WISE was the final thing, the final recommendation, because now there is the voices are not unified in Afghanistan. Military says something, the government says something else, and the public thinks something else. So the leadership should come up with a mechanism to unify all these voices and come up with a unified, hope-giving and hope-generating voice in the people that the transition is going to happen smoothly, and Afghanistan will be stable after the foreign troops leave Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Siddiqui. It was an important presentation. Your remarks underscored the importance of the use by any system. I mean, not supporting one way or other. The importance of the use of in modern communication strategy, the inclusion of the traditional tools as well, because the ability to combine the khutbah in the mosque with internet which one side in Afghanistan has been able to do and the other side has not quite mastered. This is something important, and the strategic communications is important for any governance system. I mean, you have to be able to communicate the message in the right kind of way to the people, otherwise the other side will win. We have now on our list the final speaker for this morning, Mr. Haseeb Humayoon, who is the founding partner and CEO of ARA Consulting. He has managed business development with client relations for the firm. He has written on a book called Reclusive Resources on Afghanistan's Mineral Wealth and Need for its Formalization. He has graduated from, he's a graduate of Middlebury College. I'm pleased to see this today because this is a college where I've been to lecture, as a matter of fact, in the United States, and has lived in the United States and Pakistan and Afghanistan, of course. Lives in Kabul right now, fluent in all the languages that Mr. Siddiqi is, with Spanish in addition to boot. Mr. Humayoon, you have
Thank you, Dr. Chowdhury. That was a gracious introduction. And in fact, that is not a book, it's a report. Just to correct. Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be in Singapore, and especially in the company of some accomplished people around. We have parliamentarians, we have foreign ministers, and most importantly, my former boss out here, Dr. Martin Weinbush, to whom I did say this much. Martin, you're a great boss, but it's much better to be my own boss now. And that in itself is a testament to the importance of business and entrepreneurship. If in Afghanistan we are slowly and gradually, if you will, catching up on trends in the region and elsewhere where people have started to develop an entrepreneurial culture and the basis of a more free market economy. The subject of my talk today, the title is very broad. There are too many words that need days, in fact, to explain, so please ignore that. The point today is all those words were meant to actually try to appeal to at least one of your interests and get you to sit here. What I will do is make a presentation on Afghanistan's business potential and what is possible and what is likely leading up to 2014 and beyond. Within the next 10 to 15 minutes, you'll hear me speak about the economy and business in Afghanistan. I'll make a case, albeit a mild one and an implicit one, for why it is the time for investors to actually make a small footprint in Afghanistan. And then I will also single out at least 3 sectors within the economy that have potential for growth and that can actually that promise returns on the investment. And those sectors include agriculture, transport and transit, as well as mining. I will be deliberately short and specific just to allow for time for Q&A, and I will be able to answer questions, specific questions during that time. But just to give you an overview, and in connection with yesterday, we had overall a theme of both projection of pessimism and optimism for the future of the country. Within that, I want to add another indicator. Since 2002-2003, we've had a sustained economic growth on an average of about 9.1% GDP growth. Now that for any country in the world, any other country would be a remarkable achievement, remarkable growth. But for Afghanistan, it actually is a case slightly different. Largely because we started from a very, very low base, pretty much negative growth as well as that. And then we also have an economy that's for mostly and largely dependent on purchasing power of international military presence in the country, as well as the flow of aid dollars. So that 9.1% growth many times floated around as a sense of achievement by our government bureaucrats and others, while significant, is something that should be taken a bit more soberly. What we do again, and another indicator within that 9.1% of GDP growth over the past 7 years is that despite the fact that much of it is aid, there is about 8% of investments in it. That in itself is not significant if you were to compare it to, say, Cambodia or, for that matter, even Rwanda, whereas about 30 to 25% of the GDP annually is from investments. We are at 8%. Nonetheless, that's a place to start. That's an indicator we can take and develop, build up. The presentation again today is, I will be trying to answer the question of, is Afghanistan ready for business? In short, and I will tell you this, but I would say it is sort of. Now that sort of is the critical part. Spoken generally again, but surely it is a place for business for people who have a stomach for risk and then a vision for a longer term stay in the market and returns in that sense. I'll be speaking around those themes, and just to give you background on the economy and the market in the country, we're a new market economy. The 2004 Constitution endorses free market economics. Article 10, 11, and 13 make references to free market economics in the country. But just as the Constitution is young, so is the market. And we've had many hurdles that have been rather hard and some of them easy to navigate, including the fact that I'll mention a couple of them. The system overall, both the bureaucracy, decision makings are in a way biased in favor of public sector ownership and public sector operations. So we have major government bureaucracies operating on issues where private sector could in fact be much more efficient and cost saving. And we also have another problem that such a scenario leads to, and it's pretty much a problem of leftover of rather Soviet-style thinking in the 70s and 80s, and bureaucrats who were trained within that doctrine were thinking of state-controlled economies, still in certain industries and decision-making roles. There is a confusion. There's a confusion as to the country. The Constitution as a whole has endorsed free market economics, and we're supposed to be going in that direction, but oftentimes you get regulatory frameworks newly developed, or you get decisions about certain investments pretty much influenced by the orientation of the decision maker. And I can single out, we'll be talking in details about this sector, the mining sector later on, but in the mining sector, especially before 2009, we used to have a leadership that was not convinced of the potential of the private investments in the sector. Now, what that leadership ended up doing was create a legal framework that has serious flaws now. There are serious flaws now since 2009, but the government has been working to try to undo those. But it also led to certain decisions, including, I was talking, let me just be a bit informal on this, I was talking to some of those principals who were in charge of the mining industry prior to 2009, and their sense was that they had to, before 2001, we were state-run, much of the mining in the country was happening through state-run enterprises, or state-owned enterprises. Then the shift happened in the economic culture of the country, to attracting private investments. These principals were not convinced that that's going to generate revenue or any good returns for the country. So what they tried to do was try to insert what was rather abnormal in a market economy, insanely high royalty rates on contracts for mining. Now that arrests the potential of the country, especially the sector. We get very, very few bids, and we get very specific bids. I was talking to a gentleman from China yesterday. Essentially, the market gets set up for Chinese bids. Because elsewhere in the world, when you have mining contracts bid on royalty rates, but the government assuming that royalty rates are supposed to substitute the income they could generate through extraction by their own state-owned enterprises, there you again, royalty rates you have when you have American or European and other companies bidding, they have shareholders, they have people whom they are accountable to, and they can only offer a certain percentage, justifying what the returns are for the shareholder and the level of risk in the market. In Afghanistan, because of heightened risk, because of uncertainty about returns in the short term, many foreign and the specific focus of the mining industry managers of the country until very recently on royalty rates has pretty much arrested the involvement of major international mining companies from Australia, from Canada, from elsewhere. We'll talk about that in detail, but that problem we're dealing with today essentially is a manifestation of that clash of cultures. That the Soviet-oriented, state-controlled economists trying to set up a legal framework for an economy that's trying to actually divorce itself from that problem. So we're, besides that, again, our investment potential overall in the country's had trouble with this morning. So another trouble that what it leads to again is that the idea that we are a fresh market economy is that we don't actually have, we're yet to develop supportive legal frameworks and enforcement mechanisms for protecting as well as attracting investments. We're just about to actually, we have a draft in the country but it's yet to be ratified of an antitrust or competition law, and we have a consumer protection law that's recently developed, and all of them are steps that are mandatory for any market to pick itself up and have investors and consumers both protected. From an investor's point of view, the second point I mentioned is absence of a legal framework that's supportive of our entry into the new market culture in the country. That could actually be a positive. We're starting late in the game. That means we have the benefit of the hindsight. We can look back and we can see what other countries did and actually learn from and shape our legal framework, the nature of our market, in view of our both comparative advantage and what is it that we need to do to both attract and sustain investments in the country. In certain sectors, Mr. Stani's eyes here, we've in fact succeeded in doing that. The telecom sector, for example, where there was a regulatory framework initially developed and that was inviting of both investments as well as offered some level of protection for the investors over time. What we have, and I'll tell you an anecdote on that, is remarkable growth in that sector. Prior to 2001, when I needed to call a relative somewhere outside the country, there were only 3 offices in Kabul called PCOs, public calling offices. And I tend to joke often that those were one of the only working bureaucracies. And you would go in the morning, sign up there in one of these PCOs for, say, 10 minutes of call time to a relative in Peshawar or in Canada, and there'll be a chart, your name would get listed, and then they'll give you a sense of what time in the day your turn will come because somebody else has already, there's a log of who has signed up for how many hours. That was the level of connectivity, the level of access to telephones. Post-2001, with essentially no landlines working in the country, only about 100 or 120, especially around cell phones coming to the market. And in 10 years' time, we've had marvelous growth in that sector. You've got companies coming in from South Africa, from the UAE investing, and then you've got companies with mixed shareholders, with local investors as well as international. All of them are doing pretty well in the market. Risk is growing for some of them over time, and we can discuss that later on how. But what the sense is, and some of them, specifically the case of Etisalat, UAE-based companies, is interesting. They came in, they had a very slow starting market. Many people had a few steps ahead of them, but Etisalat managed to find a niche. And over time, it has grown its consumer base, it's got its active market share, and it's now actually planning to invest over $100 million in bringing 3G to Afghanistan. So all of this, again, is the sense that the legal framework built slightly late in the game for the region, but built with the foresight, with an idea that where we needed to go, has enabled one sector to grow. Same could be replicated in many other sectors, including mining. We're slow to go there. And it needs focus. Now, obviously, again, the telecom sector cannot be indicative of trends in many other aspects of the economy. There is the investment climate overall is rather uneasy. If you were to look at figures produced annually by the World Bank doing business surveys, we're not doing that well. The only place where out of 103 countries where we rank well is about number 22, 23, and 24 annually on starting a business. But once you get into other indicators, we're pretty much very much low down the table, around the 180 or 160 in that range. The starting business thing again is the role in a market economy that's just starting, like Afghanistan. The role of the public sector is significantly crucial than in economies where they have found direction. For starting businesses, what the government initially did around 2003, I believe, in the early years, was set up a one-window, one-stop shop where you could, if you were an enterprise, or if you were an investor and you wanted to create a business, you would approach that shop and you would have your documents, your processing, you declare the level of investment you're making, and within about 7 days, with only 4 signatures, you would be the owner of a legal private business in the country. And that's a very, very speeded up process in the region compared. That's a plus, but there is obviously more other constraints for business in the country, specifically access to land. Access to land has been a problem that's plaguing the market. We've had both there's land grab, but also it takes over 250 days actually to file a petition for access to land for business purposes, and then have that process properly. And oftentimes both the investors lose interest and the process just falls apart in the process. I give you a sense of both the positive and negative. There is, on the land issue specifically, there is some movement. The government has recognized it as a major problem. There is a new agency set up called ROZ, or the Afghanistan Land Authority. Their mandate is to make it easy for enterprises and for investors to access land. My sense, and I have friends working in the sector there, is that they have a very, very tough job ahead. Largely because enforcement mechanisms from the security sector are very, very weak, and you get to, each time there is an issue of dispute over land, or government land specifically, there's pretty much horns being met by major local strongman against the government or the investor. Now, one of the characteristics of the Afghan economy, and essentially, is a very heightened level of political risk. That many times people look at things blowing up, or corruption, or for that matter, or lack of talented, well-trained people as indicators of this heightened political risk, and tend to project that the Afghan economy will take a while to take off, or to attract the level of investments that it needs to attract. My sense, again, is that for talking to investors in the country and abroad, is that investors, in fact, don't make investment decisions based on those rather micro, or in a way at least, smaller factors. The major problem plaguing the economy and its investment potential is the lack of certainty about the future. The sense of uncertainty leading to where the direction of the market is. What is it that we're going to be 5 years from now, and say 10 years and elsewhere? And I don't mean to pick on Mr. Stonex specifically, but we've been plagued over the past couple of years by a conference-oriented vision for the country. Each time the government, the principals come on in public, they give a promise to the people of about a 6-month-long conference coming down the line, or a 12-month-long conference coming down the line, and I can just go on about listing that. That really isn't helping the market. Especially not helping the market when the conference is in the country. What that does is the country goes on a standstill. Everything pretty much the government industries, they all become in service of that conference or of that event, be it the Loya Jirga or be it the Kabul conference, matters as such. And then you have the city, banks, businesses, all of them pretty much forced to close for security reasons, or for the employees being rerouted from other government agencies that they have to work with. So what I want to specifically underscore is that there is a significant need in the market, specifically by the public sector, to project certainty, to project more of a sense of endurance of the system. It's a gradual self-correcting course that, yes, there are deficits in the legal framework. Yes, there are places where we need to improve and we need to review conduct, but that's a process ongoing, and that's not a process dependent on what's going to happen 6 months down the line in a Loya Jirga or 12 months down the line in a conference. All of that's a major point. Now, again, I mentioned the discussion of political risk and how investors tend to make decisions about staying in the market, entering it, or leaving it. We're seeing trends that indicate pretty much all those 3 factors. Some people are entering the market, some people are leaving the market, and some people are trying to find ways to stay in the market. I can give you the example most recently as the more if you were to follow the news trends over the past 10 to 12 months or even 2 years, you'll get a sense that the securities situation, specifically when it comes to stability, and is deteriorating in a way. You have a sense of 2004, 2011, these timelines put out there, and lack of certainty about what they may mean for the market. Despite all that, we do have certain investments coming in. For example, the Al Quzai Group, a Afghan business corporation based out of Dubai, they invested about $65 million in the Pepsi Cola plant in Kabul just recently. And then you have Salat offering about $100 million in upgrading their network to 3G. All of these are indicators that again, market actors are finding ways to both upgrade their presence in the market as well as that they do see some potential. I will come to the discussion of why Pepsi did the Pepsi Cola one, but overall, there is another trend. There's another trend amongst investors in the country, both local and international, that's diversifying their risks. You have since 2001, we had investors coming in, putting their money, and then making good returns, despite the high risk through doing business with international actors. Now the sense is that the international actors, their presence, their purchasing power is going to get reduced. And what that's leading to many, including media actors that we know of, is diversifying their access and their risks. And they're moving to places such as Dubai, such as Kazakhstan and elsewhere, and trying to project into other markets while also maintaining a minimum or at least some level of manageable footprint in Afghanistan. And then we have another trend that's adverse, that's and that's the sense of investments or money essentially leaving the market, both in the form of cash or in the form of property being purchased elsewhere outside. It's a trend that's hard to document because much of it is in the illicit and informal market, but what we do know is that significant portions of the money that could circulate within the local economy is actually leaving the market for places like Dubai. All of that, I'll briefly speak about what the future holds and what the potentials may be. What they clause or essentially with the caveat that we do need our public sector specifically needs to pick up its game on certain areas, specifically on stability of the financial system in the country. There was a sense, there was a hype about the banking sector that was picking up and that was trying to both have access to all over the country and as well as offer some level of access to loans and cash. That bubble was punctured by the global bank crisis. Since then, we've had the focus of the government specifically has been on how to score against the international actors in that discussion. The international community, the US, pretty much pushes on and the IMF, they push on things such as prosecution and cleaning up the bank or trying to find out who owes how much and how to get that, and most of the times it's publicly connected individuals who owe the bank. And then the government, in return, pretty much comes back to them, to the international community, and in public talks about how the internationals are at fault in the process and everything is all good and nice, and renames the bank as the new Kabul Bank. Now that's not a sound market choice, because frankly put, the Kabul Bank is a discredited bank, right? And you put a new in front of it, it's just not going to yield any new credit out there for it in the public, and the stability of the financial system overall and access to finance, larger discussion is something that needs a lot of focus leading up to 2014 and even beyond. Quickly on what the future holds for the country, there is a recognition in public statements by the president, by many international actors, that given the reduction likely in aid and in military expenditure, something else in the country needs to pick up and fill in that gap, both in terms of the gap in budget financing and the gap in the circulation of the economy of money in the market. It's obviously going to be business. It's going to be investment. And the urgency, the positive side of transition or of 2014 deadline is that it may finally stimulate some level of public sector reform in support of attracting private investments in the country. And I'm using the word may specifically because, frankly put, as somebody in the private sector, I don't have much confidence that that's going to happen. Largely because one of the things, and we can talk about it, Singapore probably is the best place to be talking about that, is we've had the trouble of a well-articulated, simple to understand and relate to for the public economic vision produced by the government. We don't quite know whether we're going to be an industrial economy down the line or a services-based or a mining one or anything as such. It's always a confusion both in rhetoric and in plans. And all of that, again, that doesn't yield confidence, but there's certain positives. The positive is that we do have a much better human resources base today than we had in 2010. We have local universities, private and public, that are producing talent, that have access to new market tools. They can operate actually much better than specifically in comparison to our neighbors up north within a market economy, and there's potential for our economy. Whenever we talk of Afghanistan's future, and I think when our Khuzai put in $65 million in the Pepsi Cola plant, they were looking north. There are markets out there that think of Arab Spring, think of what may come up in the Central Asian republics, and if that happens, I think Afghanistan stands to enter those markets with certain products and certain acts. So secondly, that the human capital, again, discussion, we also get annually a good pool of graduates from Indian universities to India-sponsored scholarships. I've worked with many of them. We actually have some on staff, and they're brilliant. India right now, with the level of the economy is working, is essentially triggering creativity in the minds of the Afghans who land there. Majority of them do study, and the good part is majority of them who go to India actually are not casualties, by which I mean they come back. Elsewhere in the world, we get a lot of casualties. When people go to the US or elsewhere. The potential, again, another potential in the country that leading down the line of the transit potential. I'll be quite brief because I'm running out of time. One of the indirect or one of the unintended consequences of the past 10 years of the military presence has been the growth and development of a very, very sophisticated distribution network in the country. You have a trucking industry that is well equipped, that is run perhaps by shady actors, that's a different story, but that's equipped with modern trucks, with the system of accounting, or with the system of both following through a package from where it begins to where it's supposed to be delivered. That has great potential should, once the military drops down, to be shifted or to be transitioned to other sectors. And I think there is potential in connecting it to agriculture in the country. Agriculture overall is a sector where we can pick ourselves up, and where both packaging and value addition is one area where investments could have good return, especially connected to this distribution network that's now grown. There's another potential. You've always heard about the TAPI, the pipeline that's supposed to go from Turkmenistan all the way to India. And then we've got discussions of electricity transit, power transit from Central Asia to South Asia. All of them, while do provoke a lot of skepticism because of security concerns, because of the level of disconnection in politics of the region. Nonetheless, if they were to ever happen, now is the time. And I only need to mention the energy crisis in Pakistan as a reason for why those projects may just indeed move forward soon. The mining potential in the country, again, is vast. It's huge. We're supposed to have over $3 trillion worth of mineral resources, over $1 trillion of it in rare earth minerals. We have signed most recently in 2011 some significant contracts. One, the Hajigak iron ore mine, one of the world's biggest up in Bamyan province, was signed with the consortium of 4 Indian companies, 3 blocks of it, and another block with the Canadian company, and that's the first major Western investment coming in. We also have recently signed a contract for oil up in the Amu Darya basin with the Chinese company CNPC. There's a lot more up for bid for the coming year, including gold, copper. So what we are looking again is a market, specifically the mining sector, with great potential. The government, the current Ministry of Mines, does know its priorities, does know how to operate within the market economy, has very young talent working with the minister, and they're trying to actually they've come up with a much more refined and the proper regulatory framework. The mineral law is being amended. All of them are positives, and they offer a sense of, again, looking at the future down the line with some level of optimism for the market. The politics of it, that's for the politicians to figure out and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humayoon. You have really addressed the bread and butter issues of Afghanistan in transition, whether it's business-friendly, included only for those who have the stomach for risk, and patience for long-term return. But the main challenge, I mean, I've had long conversations with people like Ashraf Ghani and others in the outfit, is the challenge of developing an appropriate legal and regulatory framework to adapt to the needs of this change, not just in the mindset, but in the policy mindset that you talked about, the transition from commodity economy, which was what communists had, to free market economy, which hopefully is now ingrained in the Afghan psyche. Now, Q&A time, of course. Yes, ma'am. We will give you the floor immediately after the chair has used his prerogative to fill one gap in the discussions today. This is with regard to certain concerns with the development process in Afghanistan, particularly in agriculture, where some see that in effect the path to prosperity lies in the cultivation of poppies, because there's a market demand for it. So drugs, not a new thing in Afghanistan, because I began my career on the frontiers, in the frontier province of the borders of Afghanistan 30, 40 years ago. It was still a problem then, as is a problem now. What are your thoughts? Any of you can respond, but Mr. Humayoon was most directly related to confronting this issue on what kind of framework do you think the government is capable of in order to ensure that, like Central America, it does not degenerate into another set of conflicts in Afghanistan, a post-political conflict, an economic conflict, so to say, which will make Afghanistan a supplier's hell, so to say.
To take that question slightly, the way we do well in the opium industry speaks for our entrepreneurial spirit. We've pretty much monopolized that sector. But more seriously, it's one area again that's challenging, that has had significant impact on the rest of the economy because of the corruption it generates, the illicit money that then comes into the market, and the way it circulates through the shady channels, and when in fact the system, the government, the desire is to formalize the economy, to have revenue collection systems that are both streamlined and transparent, and then you have a major source of money in the country, the opium industry, that just is going to defy any formalization. That's one major challenge. What we do know specifically is that opium production, opium marketing or trafficking is directly correlated to security. While there is insecurity, while there is access for actors, shady actors, there is greater development of poppy fields, and where there isn't, while again the data varies on that, there is lesser. Over time, we've had, as to how do we actually take ourselves out of this maze, this bubble is quite a puzzle, quite a challenge. The people are discussing alternatives. Trying to get farmers and others to cultivate things other than poppy. In some places it's working, specifically in Herat and areas around it. We've got saffron being projected as an alternative that has both market potential as well as is easy to grow and easy to manage. We're doing decent on that. We have had trouble from Iran specifically on the saffron, both cultivation as well as marketing of it, because we're entering a market where Iran essentially has a monopoly. But so we're looking both at the sense of diversifying crops, allowing people to, enabling them to grow things that have market potential. But we also, where we are actually not doing that well is the enforcement mechanisms, and where you could actually track both traffickers as well as people who are encouraging competition.
Thank you, Mr. Humayoon. The chair will recognize Madame Fawzia Al-Kufi. Yeah, you want to? Okay, sir.
The big problem in the agriculture sector, for example, we are importing 200 million eggs from India. Eggs, which is very simple, we can produce in Afghanistan. In our western side, like in Herat, in Farah, we were able to, have poultry farms and others, but unfortunately it was overfloated by the Iranian market, meat and others. The same with Pakistan, for example, transit. 7 kg apples in a Kabul is $2. Because the time of the season of all our season, for example, grapes, apples, and others, so the border is closed because we cannot transport it to India and other transit because the regional population is very important to these things. And even, we bring chicken from Brazil and Canada to Afghanistan. It is so many things we can do because we have cold storage and so many other things. So this sector is also, we can work a lot, which is really well out everybody, because saffron is a one thing, but it doesn't have that much market also information. Or we cannot produce it that much in some things. But like poultry and chicken and eggs and grapes, for example, apples and Kabul is coming from China to Kabul. But we produce a lot in Afghanistan, but we cannot preserve it there. It's difficult.
Okay. Good. Now, I would urge you to keep, A, identify yourself, B, you can make your contribution, of course, either through a comment or a question, but brevity in either case is urged. We will begin with Madame Kufi.
Thank you. This is one of the sessions that I really enjoyed, and if anybody doubts the transformation in Afghan society, these people sitting there, wonderful people, are just a small example of the societal changes in Afghanistan. And I would like to start by that, tapping into what Rangina said in terms of transformation. I think Afghan society is in transformation. There is one part of the society that they would like to go forward, bring the changes. They become agents of changes, both in political, social, economic sector, and educational sector of Afghanistan. The other part of the society is those people that they believe they lose power if the societal change happens. So they want to keep power with whatever means it costs to the nation. And they control economy, they control political arena of Afghanistan, and they control everything in Afghanistan. This transformational part of society get little in terms of political support and in terms of economical support, both from the government, of course, not at all, but from international community as well. Whenever international community, any big leaders come to Afghanistan, they basically go to palace and meet all these, the so-called important leaders. And I think this is something, what we basically need is a little bit of investment, a little bit of support. Investment does not necessarily mean receiving blank checks from international community, but some kind of moral support, some kind of promotional thing for us to find our way. And this transformational part of society is everywhere. It's in the villages. It is not like the previous before 10 years or 15 years back that you only find them in the cities. You actually find them in the rural Afghanistan as well. As I give you a small example. In the last parliamentary election in 2010, I was running from a province that my Afghan colleagues know it's a very important province politically. This province has always produced leaders. There were people who were running against me were all important leaders, former president, etc., etc. They had their own candidate. And I was, we don't have party system-based electoral system in Afghanistan. I was alone. So I had to face all of these people. But and my hope was this voiceless majority silent people of Afghanistan, that they don't have strong leader to present them, and international community does not also give them the necessary support. And these are the transformational part of the society. They were spreading all messages against me. You name it, and that's common, I think, in politics. But in Afghan politics, they were really uncommon because They were attacking my personal career to political everything. But I got top votes of women all over Afghanistan. And in the top list, I was ranking number 10, competing with the men. And I got top votes of men and women in my province. And I got it from every part of the society, from rural, from women, from elderly, from youth. And I think this speaks out itself that we need to listen to this silent majority. And that is, and these are the political third and second phases of Afghanistan that we need to listen to. I think the first phase of Afghanistan needs to free its space and need to vacuum its space for the second and third generation of Afghanistan. And it's a responsibility of our international allies to properly invest and properly motivate them. Small example is all this social entrepreneurial here. The second comment I would like to make is about the potential economic growth in Afghanistan. The international perspective towards Afghanistan is a poor country with poor people of Afghanistan, and especially poor women. That's what I have been hearing all over the world: poor country, poor people, sympathy. I think we need to go from this sympathy to partnership. Afghanistan could be a reliable partner to the world for two reasons. First of all, for the important geographical location it has, and second, for the great economic opportunity it has. Haseeb John mentioned the issue of mines. I think we need to ignore the mistakes we have had in the past 10 years, not properly investing in the mines. This is a sector that could develop also employment opportunity, and I'm sure you agree with me that security and poverty and lack of employment are two interlinked issues in Afghanistan. Not necessarily many people are ideologically tolerant, but they don't have opportunities. So they go to become tolerant because Taliban pay them more, and they offer them jobs. And if we provide that alternative to our people, then and we can marginalize Taliban that way by reducing their numbers. How we can give our people this alternative and opportunity is by exploring the mines of Afghanistan properly. I also represent a province. I mean, the mines of Afghanistan are everywhere in the country, but I represent a province where there is a great opportunity for economic growth. For instance, Lapis Lazuli mine in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is the third country in the world, I think the three country in the world, one of the three countries in the world that has Lapis Lazuli. Right now, how it is produced or how it's developed is by exploding the mine illegally by local warlords or you name it, whatever people. They explore the mine, they take it to Pakistan and Iran by donkeys through illegal road. They nicely polish it and put the label made in Pakistan or made in Iran. Bring it back to Afghanistan and sell it with double or triple price to us. So if we have a proper system that could invest and explore this mine or others, it's just a small example, invest on it properly and then create jobs for the local. It doesn't have to go to Pakistan and Iran. Thank you.
Thank you for that important contribution. We will have other questioners now. Yes, Mr. Lee. But I still, for the record, I'd like you to identify yourself.
Tang Lee, as I said, I'm an ordinary blogger. 2 points. Where is the Grameen Bank of Afghanistan? Because Dr. Chowdhury made a very important point that Bangladesh is a good example in terms of the way it lost its basket case status. And one of the key elements there was, thanks to Professor Yunus, of how he noticed cultural sensitivities and started giving microloans to poor women who brought the country up. My second question, or second point, is to Mr. Siddiqi, that how is it possible that, or okay, let me rephrase that. Do you think that there's something more in the fact that you're losing the communications battle and you're speaking with the government, with the Americans and their brand of bringing happiness to everyone, against the Taliban, who the whole population and the whole world knows their brand stood for death and destruction? So is there something more in the fact that these people can now make a comeback?
Very quickly.
Thank you, sir. I've got 3 simple questions. The first one with regard to the first speaker. The business of politics. I want to check with you. You see, your concluding, presentation of the section is a matter of great concern. The question of the possibility of history repeating itself. Can you at best avoid that? So I don't know. Instead of negative tendency. Okay. The business of business for the two. Now the question of that, what is the crucial, business factor that you find that incentive that you could accord us? Because I think that the nitty-gritty seems to be very complex. So what is the utmost profound incentive that you think that you could propose that it is something of urgency to us? With regard to the social entrepreneurs and the question of the business of social entrepreneurs, I'm very glad that we have two strong ladies here, and I think that the plus factor, a force to be reckoned with. The question is that I myself deferred during the first term of Obama with regard to going worldward via Washington plus the Kabul possibility. Are you ready to lead? Because I believe that you could, because if you can do reverse engineering, even you can be better than Singapore. So the question is that, are you ready? So the question is that, I have no problem of extending the formulation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Responses?
Okay, just, there are the three views: to be very optimistic, and to be realistic, and to be pessimistic. So we cannot say I'm optimistic and do nothing, and then things will happen, change by itself. Or just to be pessimistic, nothing will happen in Afghanistan because Afghanistan will exist. People will exist for centuries. It is not a country just created 10 years ago or something like that. But there are challenges and opportunities. So how to deal with the challenges and how to use the opportunities in the country. And when I say in the end, 2014, it is an opportunity for us. But we have to seize this opportunity to have a good political transition in the country, to create new momentum of governance and accountability. If that is, we lose, so the international community is already frustrated. So the myth when I just talk about, okay, they will stay forever in Afghanistan, mines and all these things, these are just myths because we just know many other countries in the world, they have a lot of resources, but they are not stable countries. Nigeria, Congo, and so many other countries. And the same thing. So mine is not, we just say, okay, we have this and that, and then we'll be very prosperous. It all depends on good governance. Because the transformation is, Fawzia mentioned, Rangina is from the south, she is from the north. So every woman, every Afghan, every children, they have the same vision, views to have a good family and others, to have a good education and all these things. So it depends on a national plan for the whole country, not just include this and that in the country. Because the problem is that in every sector, we implemented a projects. We didn't implement a programs, because project has a life cycle. When the money is there, it will end it. But when she just talking about that, it is kind of a program, to have sustained in the long run in the country. So we need a national program for the country with good governance. And what is governance? That is a process, because it is not project to give it to somebody, process of decision making, participation, and accountability. So in the end, the Afghans should be the one to make a difference, not the international community. Yes, we need their support, we need their assistance, but the Afghan leadership, the Afghan government, and the Afghan people should take the lead. Because they should not play the advisory role and we just say, okay, international community build Afghanistan and things will happen. It is not like the way it will not happen. No country is built by outside, even if you give an example of Germany and Japan. Yes, there was a Marshall Plan and other things, but the people of Germany, they decided, to really make a difference. So we have to, the Afghans have to make decisions, and they have to improve the governance, they have to participate, there should not be indifference to so many other things. Thank you.
Mr. Siddiqi, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Why the government lost the war of communication and why the Taliban won? I think that the government didn't lose it like completely, and Taliban also didn't win it completely. And the joke, the government has been driving us crazy for a long time. But I mean, the survival of the government, it's a win. But why Taliban are like superior to the government in this area? Because Taliban are supported by some of the neighboring countries and regional powers who knows Afghanistan and the social fabric of Afghanistan better than our own government and the international community. So that's why they know what to say, how to say, and what communication tools to use. But unfortunately, the government and international community, as they themselves confess, they were not successful in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other responses from the podium? Yes, please.
Just quickly on the question about where is Afghanistan's Grameen Bank. You know, discussion about that has discredited microfinance in certain places. That's one response to it. But the other is we do have certain institutions that do micro lending in the country. There's something called the Microfinance Bank of Afghanistan, mostly operated by the Aga Khan Ismaili leader out of Canada/Switzerland. And he does focus on a specific community, but the bank is accessible to many others. And there are other small and medium sort of size NGOs as well as lending institutions supported by donor countries. They failed to have any visible impact on both entrepreneurship as well as the way the economy operates. We have a new program recently, it is promising, run by the government called the Rural Enterprise Development Program. There is a system of more of a pooling of resources as opposed to lending. So what it does is it encourages several actors in the community to come together, pool resources together, be financial as well as other resources, and then a donor, in this case the World Bank, through a government agency, matches their pooling with funds, as well as enables them with access to market, as well as training and other factors of production in the market. So there are activities along those lines in the country. They definitely haven't had, again, a sizable or impact that I know of. On your question as to why, what is the main incentive in the market? It's a very, very untapped market with very easy way to start a business in. That's the basics of it. We can discuss the rest of it some other time.
Thank you. Just one point on the Grameen thing. I mean, while there is no Grameen in Afghanistan, there is BRAC, which is, as you know, a yet larger organization. And BRAC looks at not just microfinance, but comprehensively on education, health, microfinance. And BRAC is actually present in 26 of the 34 provinces at this point in time, with 95% of the employees are Afghans. I've discussed this with Fazla Hassan Abid, who's the BRAC leader. And Fazla Hassan Abid's point is, yes, there are certain sensitivities in Afghanistan, as the word Bangladesh, or resistance to change, the whole Mongolic kind of culture. But his point was, the BRAC point, that's his point, that in these cases, interventions are even more necessary in order to effect changes in the mores of the community. That is why these are necessary. Largely, broadly well received in Afghanistan or by all sides. There was a case of 2 kidnappings. We tried to negotiate through the Americans, we failed. Pakistanis, we failed. Rangina Hamidi, we failed. So we negotiated with the Taliban directly and ultimately obtained the release of those BRAC employees who were kidnapped. Madam?
Yes. My name is Raju Shawlas. I'm from...
You could move to the microphone so everyone will hear you.
Yes. Hello, my name is Raju Shawlas. I'm from Central Asia Development Group. Our company is based here in Singapore, and we've been working in Afghanistan for the past 10 years. My husband and I had also worked in Afghanistan previously to that. We've been very much engaged with many donors in Afghanistan, implementing various programs, sustainability, alternative livelihoods, as well as agriculture. I completely sympathize and understand and support what you're saying, that the success to Afghanistan has to be long-term, and it has to be from the people of Afghanistan. The current government, as well as the donor community, are they willing, and do you feel that they are able to look at a long-term approach and take the buy-in from the Afghan people rather than just implementing? You spoke earlier, Madam, about giving some of having various leaders, whether they be military, not able to handle development. Do you feel that our government, that the Afghan government is able to take that challenge and actually project what's important? Because the donors are definitely doing short-term projects. We ourselves are sometimes involved in many quick impact programs, but is the current administration able to take that challenge on?
Okay, thank you. We have only 5 minutes, so Madam, if you will respond to this.
A very important question. Quite honestly, I don't think the current administration is capable of doing any better than what the military, ISAS, NATO is doing. However, that does not exclude actors and or activists on the ground, as my colleague pointed out, that there are people that are not known, that are, there might be little people on the ground, quite active, successful in doing things the right way, but not the international community nor the Afghan government is taking the time to identify those individuals and or groups or organizations. Just because we say that NGOs are corrupt or that they've been trained to be corrupt does not mean that 100% of that is the case. There's always exceptions, but finding those exceptions require the energy and the commitment to really seek the difference that we want to see on the ground. But if people just want to come, for 2 years, 3 years time, and they just want to spend the money like GTZ did, they don't care about where the impact of that $1 million really at the end of 5 months would be, then sure, they will go ahead and find people to just use that money and waste that money. But if people are serious enough and care about the long-term impact on the society, then they will take the time to find the correct and right agents to bring that change. And at the end, I want to stress that we as Afghans, and hopefully I'm speaking on behalf of everybody, but my personal opinion is I would rather have 1 or 2 projects or programs for my country and my people that are really good quality-wise and for long-term, rather than these 1,000 or 5,000 projects that are quick impact that may be good for the next 3 months or 6 months, and then 6 months later we're back at point zero. So it's possible.
Okay, all good things must come to an end sometime, and so must this. But before this, let's just stress a couple of takeaways we have from these discussions. One is the extreme importance of having the Afghans themselves, and we have seen from this fora that it's possible to do that. Afghans themselves be in the driver's seat of the development of their own destiny. It's absolutely important. Another I'd like to stress is the need to evolve an appropriate civil society. There has to be a civil society, of course, because no Afghan government would be strong enough to do everything, to complement the government's work, and together, working with the government and the international community, evolve a model of development that is in tune with Afghans, with the local mores, though it must not fight shy of changing some of the existing social values, should they be seen to be running counter to modernization. It is only then that the hopes and aspirations of the common Afghan man and woman will come to fruition. So let us end these discussions here now by giving a hand to our speakers and also to the members of the audience for their patience and for their contribution.
Just the last joke, I just make it, we don't want to be in the driving seat. We want to sit in the back, ask the driver to go left and the right,
That is true.
To be not used as a chauffeur, the Afghan chauffeur is used as a chauffeur, just sit in the driving seat and just someone else in the back seat go left and right.
That must change, yes.
Thank you, speakers. I would like to invite Dr. Chowdhury to present tokens of appreciation to our speakers. Ms. Rangina Hamidi. Mr. Shahmahmood Miakhel. Mr. Sabir Siddiqi. Mr. Haseeb Humayoon. Once again, thank you everyone for your active participation and stimulating discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now break for lunch. Both vegetarian and non-vegetarian meals are available. Just